The Battlefield franchise is renowned for being incredibly strong when it comes to graphics, and recently I had a question. I wanted to compare Battlefield games ranging from Battlefield Bad Company 2 all the way through to Battlefield 5. I wanted to see what game looked the best, and did the older games hold up against the newer ones. Bad Company 2 came out in March 2010, over 9 years ago, and in that time we've seen 5 additional Battlefield games in a variety of settings. These have ranged from all-out warfare of the First World War to cops and robbers shootouts in downtown Los Angeles. The engine behind these fantastic looking games is Frostbite, a game engine developed by DICE and designed for cross-platform use. Throughout this video we'll see several iterations of the engine, starting with version 1.5 with Bad Company 2 and finishing with version 3 with Battlefield 5. It's worth noting that even Frostbite 3 is constantly being updated, so what exact version or variant DICE are using is a bit of a mystery, whilst the engine itself is renowned for being quite a pain to work with. That being said, hopefully you'll be able to see the difference between the different versions of Frostbite. I'll take a look at the different Battlefield games as well, comparing things such as destruction in order to see how things have progressed over time. There are no doubts in my mind the newer Battlefield games look really quite special, but personally I think Battlefield 3 is arguably the best looking Battlefield game. Maybe that's just a personal preference, and we all do have something that we like and others really don't agree with us, so for that please leave your comments down below. Let's take a closer look. So starting out, I'll just do a quick summary of all the different Battlefield games before we take a deeper dive into things such as destruction, levolution and other things that you can compare between the games. Battlefield Bad Company 2 is on Frostbite 1.5, and with that we had Destruction 1.0. Destruction 1.0 allowed players to destroy the environment for the first time in Battlefield Bad Company, while Bad Company 2 took it to the next level. Entire buildings could be destroyed, leading to some really epic battles and maps that would change over time. Bad Company 2 is based in a modern warfare setting, has 5 different modes and was very well received when it was released. Most people will look back and say Bad Company 2 was one of the best games I've ever played, it was great for Rush, and it was a really good Battlefield game. From there we then had Battlefield 3, and this was released on Frostbite 2.0. This is also where Destruction 3.0 made its debut, with falling debris potentially killing players. Further changes to the engine included the addition of suppressive fire and disabling vehicles before destroying them. Battlefield 3 sold 5 million copies in its first week of release and was incredibly popular, set within a modern setting and acting as a direct sequel to Battlefield 2. From there we then had Battlefield 4, and this again moved up to Frostbite 3. The third generation of Frostbite made its debut in Battlefield 4 on the 29th of October 2013. In this updated engine, the environments became much more dynamic upon the actions of the players, and Destruction 4.0, also known as Levolution. The most recent EA title released on Frostbite 3 is Anthem, and sources within BioWare claim that Frostbite's complexity contributed to difficulties surrounding the game's development. That would explain a lot of problems that DICE had with Battlefield 4. Despite that, it sold a lot of copies, but as I said, many will remember the complete mess it was on release, and it took over a year to reach its potential. 6 months into the game's life cycle, DICE released a program called the Community Test Environment, and this helped achieve their goal of fixing the broken mess that had even gotten the company into some legal troubles due to its technical state. Battlefield Hardline followed Battlefield 4 and was also on Frostbite 3.0. Probably my least favourite setting in the franchise, but not the worst game, Hardline received a mixed critical reception. Lots of new modes such as Heist, Blood Money and Hotwire arrived with the release of the game, and I'm not sure if you can remember, but this was initially set to be released only 1 year after Battlefield 4 came out. This was later delayed to March 2015, but that goes to show you what DICE was capable of just a few years ago when it came to consistent content updates for Battlefield games, not only in terms of DLC, but also in terms of brand new games themselves. Then came the big one, Battlefield 1. Again on Frostbite 3.0, Battlefield 1 sold millions of copies, and was there to take the gaming world by storm with its fantastic trailers and well thought out marketing campaign. Battlefield 1 first hit our screens in 2016, and we got new modes, classes, vehicles, and the war story single player. Levolution was gone in BF1, but we did see behemoths make an entrance, and with that you had some pretty epic destruction. Melee animations had a complete overhaul, whilst I personally think that with everything on ultra settings, it's probably the best looking Battlefield game out there. DICE took a risk with going back to World War I, but it really did pay off, and the gritty experience you get with Battlefield 1 is still worth going back to today. Finally, we have Battlefield 5. Once again on Frostbite 3.0, it's my least favourite game in the franchise, and one that appears to be struggling to gain any sort of traction as an enjoyable Battlefield game. Battlefield 5 was almost always destined to have a hard life. A terrible marketing campaign and broken game on release, Battlefield 5 is in need of a lot of love before many will consider it on the same level as Battlefield 3, 4 or 1. During development, DICE stated that the game would not have paid downloadable content or loot boxes for non-cosmetic items. However, the cosmetic system has since been found to be flawed, with the Battlefield coin system and broken company coin system often leading to quite a lot of controversy, especially on social media. Taking a look at the graphics in Battlefield, you can clearly see that things have changed over time. Soldiers and weapons, the environment, changeable weather, vehicles and effects. All of this stuff is progressing from a technical standpoint, but where will it end? The introduction of photogrammetry in Battlefield 1 with the Chateau on Ballroom Blitz shows an example of this progression. I would argue that we have reached a point in Battlefield 1 whereby the game looked good enough and the focus should have been placed on absorbing gameplay and polished mechanics. Yes, I do realise that as a new game comes out, it needs to potentially look better than the last one, and there are certain tricks that game developers will use, especially when marketing a game, to make things look better. For example, with a new FIFA game, what they will do is take a screenshot from the old game on ultra graphics and then have a new screenshot from the new game and place the player in a environment with rain, because the rain will add reflections and therefore give the impression that the graphics are better. This is a simple trick, however with Battlefield the graphics have generally improved game on game. My point is that we've got to a point in Battlefield 1 where the game looks superb. It also looked great in Battlefield 3, I think. From a technical standpoint things are improving, but is it really necessary? I think people in the Battlefield franchise are looking for more substance with their gameplay and maybe more functionality as opposed to it just looking pretty. Some believe that Battlefield 5 is the best looking Battlefield game we've seen so far, but I'm not so sure. There are some parts of it that look great, certain aspects are really pretty, but I don't know if it quite reaches the heights that Battlefield 1 did, and it might not get the setting just right and do World War II any justice. I have recorded a 15-second clip from all the Battlefield games we're focusing on in this video, and I'll let them play in the background one after each other, starting with Battlefield Bad Company 2 and finishing off with Battlefield 5. I chose a pretty map for each game and turned the HUD off where I could, and I've also recorded on ultra settings at 1440p at 60 FPS. Now yes, you might not agree it's the prettiest map, but for me it's one that I thought really showcased how good the game looked. Leave a comment down below with the best looking game in your opinion, and maybe even the best looking map.
Esplosivi pronti!
Focusing on Battlefield 5 for a second, I can pretty much confirm that character models have become noticeably worse when comparing to games such as Battlefield 1. Customization has been a major factor in this problem, and textures seem to have a low resolution when playing and mix into the background, leading to DICE actually adding some additional soldier lighting to help with this in a previous patch. Another issue is the colour palette. The colour palette used in each game is very important, as it gives off that setting and feeling that you have when you jump back and play the game. Battlefield 3 had a blue tint, and this was probably the most noticeable change with the colour palette, and there is a bit of that in Battlefield 5. Not everybody loves it, but it definitely gave Battlefield 3 its own niche, and everyone remembers it to look a certain way. What do you think of the blue filter? Whilst it did give that clear identity, some might argue that the game looks far better without the filter, and the same can be said for the blue filter DICE pasted all over Devastation of Rotterdam on Battlefield 5. BF5 does suffer with what I can only describe as a bad HDR problem, with sharp contrast, weird vibrance, and an oversaturation, and many detailed objects that don't stand out at all. Spotting enemies is tricky, not only because they're all lying on the ground, but also due to those graphical issues. Battlefield 5 also has DXR real-time ray tracing that you guys will know as RTX. This looks insanely cool and is a real eye candy moment for the Battlefield franchise, but it's not really something that you can use that consistently during the online multiplayer sections of the game. It's more for the campaign. However, I would keep an eye out for it though, as it may change into the future as technology progresses. As for the destruction, I think we can all agree that this peaked in Battlefield 4 down to Levolution. DICE decided to move away from that in Battlefield 1, and although there are the odd few events linking into Levolution, such as the changeable weather, and maybe you could argue that the bridge falling down on Sinai is a slight homage to some Battlefield 4 Levolution, for the most part they did go down a different path. In Battlefield 5 they went down a different path again, with buildings crumbling unrealistically in some cases, and they also caused the map to change from a mixture of well thought out routes and cover to a complete wasteland. This is potentially a ploy to create a Second World War feeling, however that can't be the case considering the path DICE decided to take with Battlefield 5 from a historical standpoint. I don't know, I do feel as if the destruction in BF1 was slightly better than in Battlefield 5. BF5, it does look pretty from time to time, but for the most part I think it's just a bit too much. There's too much rubbish on the floor. I always get lost and stuck on things, and it's very difficult to have a good gunfight with another player because you never know what's going to happen. The proning meta adds to this, but for the most part I think from a graphical point of view, Battlefield 1 was a better looking game. Now to finish this video off, I'm going to place clips back to back, starting with Bad Company 2 and working all the way up to Battlefield 5 with gameplay, HUD on, 1440p, max graphics, in a very action-filled sequence. They might be from Conquest, Rush, it doesn't really matter. The point is, I want you to sit back and take into account everything that's happening. Which one of these games, assuming they all release today, would you want to buy? I'm thinking most people will settle with Battlefield 3, maybe some with Battlefield 4 or 1. Very few will probably go for BF5, and Bad Company 2, whilst I do love it, and at the time it was a great game, I think that one has aged the most, but that's fair enough because it is of course the oldest game. Let me know in the comments. I know I've asked you through this video to place a few comments, but maybe you have done, and I will go through and read them. I do like making these comparison videos and seeing what you guys have to say. Thanks for watching, enjoy the clips in the background, and I'll catch you in the next video.
Пакет, возьми! Вот, медпакет, возьми!